And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed. To you it shall be for food. Genesis 1:29. Man did eat angels' food. He sent them meat to the full. Psalm 78:25. Everyday Manna with Lisa.
Hi everybody, and welcome to Everyday Manna. Today we're going to be making one of my favorite soups. We're going to be making an Italian minestrone soup, which is a delicious vegetable and bean and pasta mixture. It's delicious. Alongside that, we're going to make a butter and herb stuffed Italian bread that we're going to put in the oven, and we're just going to make a simple salad with a balsamic vinaigrette, only we're going to use an arugula, which is a lettuce that is got a peppery bite. Sometimes it's called rocket, and sometimes it's called arugula. And it's just now really kind of starting to come into the grocery stores. It's fantastic, but we'll get to that later. Let's get started. I've got my oven preheated to 425 degrees for the bread. I have a soup pot here, a stock pot, a heavy-based stock pot, preheated to like medium-high heat. I'm going to put just a little bit I'm just going to use canola oil in this. You can use extra virgin olive oil if you want to, but I'm just going to use some canola oil. I have 3 carrots. Now this is one of those recipes that honestly you can change the vegetable combination to whatever you like. I like most all vegetables actually, so I tend to just use whatever looks good in the store that day. And today I'm going to use a variety of beans and onions and carrots and celery, which are just some of my favorite things. I like to saute the onions and the celery and the carrot just a little bit before I add my broth. My little chopper's gone, so let me just do this here. I like to just saute them to kind of bring out the natural caramelization and the flavorings of the carrots and the onions and the celery, which is the basis, honestly, for a whole lot of soups. Cut them to where they're about the same size. The fatter end, of course, of the carrot we cut in half, and just cut them however you want to cut them. If you want to make them dices, then make them diced. It's up to you. Just get them in there. This is a great, great dish that I make year-round. Now, I'm not one of those people that think you can only have soups and stews and chilies in the winter. I eat soup year-round because I love it. It's a great thing to put on the stove, and then, you know, you can just eat it as you go about your day, and it lasts and lasts, and it feeds a lot of people. Let's get the onion in next. Got one little onion here. You can put in as much or as little as you like. I like onion in my soups. It adds a lot of flavor. It's the basis for about any soup I do. I at this moment can't think of a soup I make that I don't put onion in at some point, because it just adds so much flavor to the soups. So like I said, you can put whatever kind of veggies that you and your family like. Sometimes I'll get a mixture of Italian frozen vegetables and put in here, but my store didn't have any of those today, so I just chose to get the flat little Italian beans, and those are good, the little green beans. This is a very, very healthy soup because it's chock full of vegetables and beans and all kinds of good things for you to eat. Tomatoes, so it's extremely healthy. And very, very good. If you've never made minestrone, you're in for a treat. It is an Italian dish, so we're going to put some garlic. I'm going to put, depending on how big your cloves are, I'm going to put 2 cloves of garlic. If they're little, you would want to put a little more, but you want to have that background of the garlic flavor. Never add your garlic until you've got something in that pot, because the garlic will burn. And if you have ever burned garlic, well, that was 2 in 1, so we'll just use the 1. If you've ever burned garlic, you'll know what I'm talking about. it is horrible. It becomes bitter and it's terrible. But boy, when it's cooked just right, it's delicious. It adds so much to the dishes. Now, you could, if you wanted to, make this a completely vegetarian dish. I'm going to use a combination of chicken broth and beef broth. But if you wanted to make this a totally vegetarian meal, just substitute. Nowadays, you can get some really good vegetable broths in the section just where you buy the beef broth and the chicken broth. You can get vegetable broth. So if you wanted to make this vegetarian, by all means, just add vegetable broth instead of the chicken and the beef like I'm going to do. It's up to you, whatever you like. Now, one of my personal favorite vegetables, which is celery. I think this is one of those things you either really like or you really don't like. I really like it, so I add a lot. If you don't like it, you can leave it out or add less, whatever you like. Cut it into little strips and then, half-inch little dice here's fine. I love celery. I eat it raw, love it stuffed with peanut butter or cream cheese. Sometimes I'll just cut up celery and boil it in a little bit of water and eat it. I simply love it. In everything. It adds such a good crunch when it's raw. Really good. I went to California several years ago on for a training program on some computer software, and that's where they did it. And we traveled up to a place called Oxnard, which is a little bit north of Los Angeles, and it's a great farming region, and they grow celery there. So I got to see how they actually grow celery in the dirt. It was kind of neat. I enjoyed it. Okay, now let's add a little bit of salt. Now remember, we are using a boxed chicken broth and beef broth, so you don't want to do too much salt, but you want a little bit. And we're just really sauteing these vegetables until they're tender. Takes just a couple of minutes. They're actually about there. Delicious. That looks good. Now to this, we're going to add a couple of cans of just diced tomatoes. These are 28-ounce cans. If you have home canned, by all means use your home canned tomatoes. I do at home. I put up at least 3 bushels of tomatoes a year because I use a lot of tomato product. So if you've got your homemade, absolutely use your homemade. Now what I like to do, this is a very thick soup. So what I like to do is add my vegetables and my beans and all of that kind of stuff, and then I see where I'm at, and we'll add my chicken broth at the end to see how much extra liquid I need. I'm going to take a quick break. I'm just going to let this kind of heat up just a minute, then we're going to add the rest of our ingredients and we're going to work on our bread. I'll be right back with you in just a minute. right, now our soup is bubbling away, so let's add a few more things. I have 1 can of just drained kidney beans, just red kidney beans. You can use the dark or the light, whatever you want. Then I have 1 can of drained, those are garbanzo beans. Sometimes they're called ceci, and sometimes they're called garbanzo beans or chickpeas. Come by, depending on the brand, depends on the name on there. They are delicious. That's what they make hummus out of, if you like hummus. Then I have 1 can of drained, the big cannellini beans. And this, like I said, with the vegetables, this is something, if maybe you don't like one or more of those types of beans, you can add whatever kind of bean that you want. Now, traditional minestrone does have a lot of bean in it, so that's why I like the combination of the different textures, the different flavors. The garbanzo beans are just a little bit firmer than, say, the cannellini beans or the kidney beans, but you can use whatever you like. Then I have 1/2 of a bag of the frozen Italian beans, green beans, because my store did not have the mixed Italian vegetables, which is what I typically put in this soup. So you can substitute whatever that you can find. That's the great thing about this kind of cooking. Use what you can find, use what you like. If your garden is coming in with lots of produce, great, great, great soup to make with those wonderful garden fresh produce, or your farmer's market, that kind of thing. Now, I'm looking a little thick, so I know I'm gonna need to add the stock. I'm going to add 1 box of frozen spinach, which it's not thawed yet, but it will be in just a moment. If you can thaw it out, go ahead and have it thawed. If you don't want to use frozen and you want to use fresh spinach, absolutely use your fresh spinach. Great way to get spinach into your diet because it just blends throughout the soup. It's full of iron, full of minerals and vitamins and fiber, and spinach is one of the healthiest things you can eat. I love it in all kinds of ways, so it adds so much to the soup. Don't leave the spinach out if you can help it. Now, let's add, like I said, I'm using a combination of beef and chicken because I like the blending of the flavors. So let's put in, that's about 1/2 a box of beef, and then let's add some chicken because you want to have that flavor in there. I like the blend, but you can use all chicken, you can use all beef if you want to, whatever your family likes. Let's add that in there, and we're gonna let this simmer for just a few minutes while we chop some herbs, and my pot is full. Absolutely full. Look at that. Can't hold any more. It smells so good. Now, let's turn that up. Look how delicious that looks. Now that spinach will thaw in the soup and it'll just go throughout the soup. So let's just let that hang out for a minute while we chop some herbs. Let me get that more on the eye there. Let that hang. You want to just medium-low heat. Let it just do its thing. Now, because I have my herb garden is doing really well this year, thank you, Lord, I have fresh herbs today. In the wintertime when I make this, obviously I don't have my fresh herbs. This soup is perfectly delicious with dried rosemary and dried thyme. I'm not a big fan of dried basil, so I probably wouldn't put dried basil in it, but dried rosemary, dried thyme, dried Italian seasoning mix that you can buy, the dried herb mix, perfectly good in this soup. But I do have my fresh herbs, so I'm going to use my little herbs that I just picked this morning, and this is my thyme that I grow. I grow 2 different kinds, then rosemary and some fresh basil and some flat leaf Italian parsley. So let's get some of the thyme out. Now I know, this is very young thyme, so to speak. So my stems, for the most part, are very, very tender outside of that main stem. So I'm not going to take the time to completely strip all the leaves off because my leaves are so tender, my stems, outside of the main one. So I'm not going to fool with taking all those leaves off. I'm just going to use the stems too because they have a lot of flavor. So don't worry about getting them all the way off. Just get the main one out. Just hold it by the top and go backwards. That's how you take all those little leaves off. Smells so good. There's nothing like fresh herbs. Smell fabulous. And then let's use a little rosemary. Now rosemary is very, very potent. If I had to pick one herb that was my personal favorite, this would be it. I use it in so many different things. It goes with soups, it goes with stews, it goes with all kinds of meat. Chicken, beef, pork, whatever you're cooking. Vegetables galore. And now you don't want to eat the stem of the rosemary, so just start at the top and go back. And I tell you, I don't have a garden at my home. Now my mom has a garden at her house, but I don't have the room to have a big garden. So what I do is buy flower pots, you know, the ones that you just plant your annual flowers in, and put my herbs in that and have them up on my back porch. And I'm telling you, they thrive back there in those pots. So you can grow your own herbs. Get the little plants, get them anywhere wherever you buy flowers. Get your little plants and just grow your own herbs. You would be amazed at how easy it is. Anybody, just give them a sunny spot and water, and there you go. And you got your fresh supply all summer long. And you know, the grocery stores nowadays sell a lot of the fresh herbs. I find them a little pricey though, except for the parsleys and things like that. But you can sure grow it. And you know what? You can dehydrate it by hanging it upside down, your bunches at the end of the season. You can dry them and have them all winter long. It's just fabulous. Now, let's put about half of this in our soup. Oh, it smells so good. Put that in there and stir that up. Now, let's turn that heat up just a touch. See if we can get that spinach to break up a little bit. You can thaw that in your microwave for just a minute or so if you want to. Smells so good. Love it. Now, let's just let that do its thing. Let it hang out there. Let's start on our bread. Let me get this out of my way here for just a moment, because we're going to use some of that too on our bread. Now, I like to do compound butters for lots of different things. You know, on meats, they're delicious, but on bread, slathered in the middle of bread and then put in the oven is simply divine. I have 1 stick of butter that is softened, and I personally like real butter. I am not a fan of margarines, but if you like margarine, you could use margarine in here. I just find that you know, butter in moderation, to me, it's the flavor's incomparable. I just love butter. Now, let's add the rest of our little herbs that we chopped, and we're going to add a few more. We're going to add some basil. If you've never had fresh basil, you are in for a treat. It is such a delicious, delicious flavor. Oh, so good. It's kind of almost a licorice-y type thing. I'm just going to pull off these leaves. We're going to take a quick break. When I come back, we're going to chop this and get our bread ready to go into the oven, finish up our soup, and make our wonderful little salad dressing for our arugula. I'll be right back with you in just a minute. All right, now our soup is just boiling away. All I did was chop the herbs that we had picked here, the basil and the thyme and the rosemary, and just added it to the 1 stick of softened butter that I have, and just stirred that up. That's all we've done. Now, I use unsalted butter, so because of that, I'm going to add a little bit of salt to it. I use unsalted because I like to control the amount of sodium in my foods. And if you are watching your sodium, by the way, with those beans that we put in the soup, you will want to rinse those. I didn't, I just drained them, but if you need to watch your sodium, rinse them under some cold water, and that'll take away a lot of that extra sodium. I have 1 loaf of just Italian bread that I bought at the grocery store. I'm going to cut it in half. Oh, I love bread. I just love this stuff. And I'm going to take my butter mixture and I'm going to put it on the bread. This is why you want that butter soft, is so that you can smear it all over the bread. I'm only going to do one side because I'm going to put it together here. Get every last little bit of this. Mix up the combination however you want. If you want to add some dill, you could add some dill. If you want to add some tarragon or sage or whatever kind of herbs you like. Chives would be fantastic in this. I just don't have any chives. I'm not growing chives this year. Use what you have. Kind of spread it out. You want to cover it all though. Make sure you get it out to the ends, because if you don't, somebody's going to be cheated. And you don't want to be cheated on the bread. Let me move that so you can see what I'm doing here. I'll put that right there for the minute. Now, let's put that to the side. Get our breadcrumbs up here. I'm a messy cook, but I know I'm not the only one. Now, I have a little bit of fresh Parmesan cheese. You see this rind? Speaking of, if you have a block of cheese, you see the, let me see if I can figure this out, how it has that little end there, that's called the rind. Save those. Don't ever throw those away, because that would be fantastic dropped down in that soup. If you have a Parmesan cheese rind, put it in your soup. It's fantastic. It just kind of melts in there. But we want to grate some of this Parmesan cheese. I like freshly grated Parm cheese, unless I'm using a ton, and then I'll buy the pre-grated that you get in the dairy case. But this is by far my favorite cheese. I dearly love this stuff, and I eat it all the time. I wish you could see us after we tape this program. Sometimes it's so funny. We taped a couple of weeks ago where I used fresh cheese, and we were all just gathered around after, shaving off big long pieces of this cheese, eating it. We just love it around here. It is truly very, very good. Oh, delicious. And you know what? I'm using all of it. And so you know what I'm going to do with this rind? Because I have it. If you don't have it, don't worry about it. But because I do have it, I'm putting it in the soup, because it will add flavor, and it just sort of melts kind of in there. And then you pull it out at the end. It doesn't dissolve into the soup. It just adds some flavor in there. So I put that in there. If you don't have one, don't worry about it. You don't have to have it. Take your cheese. Fantastic. Fresh Parmesan cheese, there's no comparison. Now, let's see if I can do this without making a mess. Save a little bit if you want to drizzle some on top of your soup, which is really good. If not, put it all on the bread, which is what I'm gonna do. So good. Now, we're going to put some fresh cracked pepper, and we're going to put this in the oven, about 450 degrees, covered, for about 10 minutes, till that bread warms, that butter kind of melts, the cheese sort of dissolves into it, and oh, it'll be fantastic. So, let's just wrap this up and get it in the oven. Okay, now our bread is in the oven, and we're going to taste our soup for seasoning. You always want to taste it, make sure that it has enough salt. Needs a little bit of salt. Add however much that you like. Now, for the pasta part of this, I just use spaghetti, and I take my spaghetti and I break it into little pieces. This is a great way to use up all those little bits that end up in the bottom of your pasta jar at home. Or you can buy now little mini shapes of pasta, whatever you like. If you don't want to use the spaghetti, you can use macaroni, you can use orzo, you can use little bow ties, you can use seashells, you can use whatever you like. I've got about probably 2 ounces of broken pieces of spaghetti, and it's going everywhere, but that's okay. Stir that up. That needs to cook for about 6 minutes or so until your spaghetti noodles are al dente, and then it'll be done. Now, while that's simmering, let's put the lid back on. It's hot. Be careful. Oh, it smells so good. While that's cooking, let's just quickly make a little salad dressing. We're going to make just a quick little vinaigrette. I'm going to use about a teaspoon of coarse-grained mustard. I'm going to use a couple of tablespoons of balsamic vinegar. This is my choice. You use whatever kind of vinegar you like. A little bit of salt, a little bit of freshly ground pepper, about a teaspoon of each. While you're whisking, stir in, now this is where you want to use extra virgin olive oil. I like my salad dressings to be a little more vinegary than most people. I'm going to use about probably a half a cup of extra virgin olive oil if you, or about, now mine's about a fourth of a cup, I guess. If you like yours a little less vinegary, use less vinegar. If you don't like balsamic, use whatever kind of vinegar you like. Or you can use pre-purchased up salad dressing that you like. Now let me show you arugula. This is arugula lettuce, and I find it now everywhere I go. And it's just, sometimes you'll see it labeled rocket, but it's just a smaller leaf lettuce that is fantastic. It has a really big peppery bite to it. I simply love it. But it is a little on the spicy side, so be warned. Just simply dress that right before you serve it. And that's just a simple little green salad to go alongside your soup. All right, now our food is done. Here's our wonderful little arugula salad with just a quick balsamic vinaigrette. Look at these delicious pieces of bread with the yummy cheese and herb and butter blend, and our wonderful minestrone soup. And I'll tell you what, I just absolutely could not wait. I want to show you what this bread looks like. Ugh, does that not just look absolutely yummy? And you know what? It tastes even better. Look there how good that looks. Oh, it's so good. Let's have a taste. And our soup is wonderful. I hope you'll try these recipes, download them, and let me know what you think. And I'll see you next time on Everyday Manna.
Thank you for watching Everyday Manna with Lisa. This program is made possible by viewers like you. Your support is continually needed to keep Christian programming on the air. Please send your best financial gift to Living Faith Television in care of Everyday Manna, P.O. Box 1867, Abingdon, Virginia 24212.